Hello, thank you for joining with me. We are with Ken Wapnick, PhD, in his journey through the text of A Course in Miracles. And today we are on Chapter 5, Healing and Wholeness. We are picking up our reading in the ego's fear of the atonement principle. The ego does not perceive sin as a lack of love, but as a positive act of assault. This is necessary to the ego's survival because as soon as you regard sin as lack, you will automatically attempt to remedy the situation, and you will succeed. The way to remedy the situation of lack brought about by the sin and belief is to choose the abundance of love. In other words, to accept the Holy Spirit's atonement by learning Jesus' lessons of forgiveness. Since it is only the mind that can choose, having first chosen sin as its reality, the remedy Jesus offers us is the miracle that returns our attention to the mind. The journey from mindlessness to mindfulness. So we can choose the innocence of Christ over the ego's sin of separation. The ego regards this as doom, but you must learn to regard it as freedom. A major theme of this course is ending our identification with the ego. That is why the concept of a decision maker is so important. We learn to identify with the decision-making part of our minds rather than the ego, with which we had previously identified. To the ego, the abundance of God's love is doom, its end. Therefore, as long as we identify with the thought system of scarcity and specialness, we will be terrified of love and the one who teaches it, including the external teachers who represent Him for us. We need to shift our identity from the ego self to the decision-making self, the dream's dreamer who can now choose the freedom of the atonement as its way home. It, the ego, tries to usurp all the functions of God as it perceives them, God as both a damning and saving figure, because it recognizes that only total allegiance can be trusted. As long as we forget we have a mind, the ego has our total allegiance. When we choose the ego over the Holy Spirit, we choose it totally. The ego's fear, as we know, is that we would change our minds, but when we accept mindlessness, having made a body and the world into which we think we are born, we affirm our allegiance to it. This helps us to see that when we take the first steps toward letting Jesus be our teacher, looking at the world through eyes of forgiveness to see the primary content over form, the ego strikes back with a vengeance. It accuses us of betrayal because it only recognizes total allegiance. Anything else is a sin, and out of its fear of dissolution, it punishes sinners mercilessly to keep them separated as guilty victimizers. Excluding yourself from the atonement is the ego's last-ditch defense of its own existence. It reflects both the ego's need to separate and your willingness to side with its separateness. This willingness means that you do not want to be healed. The very act of our being born is saying we do not want to be healed. The ego protects its existence by excluding the decision-making part of our minds from the atonement, as indicated on the chart by the dotted line between the wrong and right-minded boxes. This line is like a solid wall to the ego, as though an iron curtain had descended that prevents our seeing the Holy Spirit's shining light or hearing His beautiful song. This division represents our ongoing decision to be separate and an essential part of the ego's strategy that seemingly ensures its survival is the son's belief in the reality of guilt. This supports the insanity of separation and sin, and sets into motion the need for the son to escape the inevitability of punishment by projecting his sinful, guilty, and fearful self into a body, his and another's. I am going to go ahead and stop there today. I so appreciate you joining with me, and tomorrow we will start guilt. Have a wonderful day or evening. I love you. I will see you then. Thank you.